There's something that you're not saying.
Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Carlos, we've got, I don't even know how to describe this guy. Do you? I mean, we say this all the time.
Broadcast professional. That's
he's
what
a
it
pro.
Is.
We're
just amateurs.
Pro. No, and this guy's going to make us look like amateurs.
I would say fat.
Okay, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. Although you have a great beard, and unfortunately for our listeners, they can't see that. But
great beard, but yeah.
Great beard. The way you trim it up, it looks professional. Anyway, let me just, Carlos, run down the resume real quickly. This is a guy who, can I say produced? I'm going to say produced the Drew and Mike show at WRAF for, I don't know, 50, 60 years, something like that.
Felt like it.
Then radio becomes, I don't know how we should say this. It changes. They see the future. Mark and Drew and Mike and some other very smart people see the future in podcasting and also in Drew's basement. So they create a studio and create a network called the Red Shovel Network, and then have their own shows. And they move the Drew and Mike show down to this basement where it's more popular than ever. And this is the man, Carlos, who makes this happen. He runs the board. He produces it. He adds wisdom and wit every day of the week, all day. He also produces, I don't know if this is such a good.
Are you ever going to say his name?
No,
you're too kind.
He produces the Mike and the ML, the Soul of Detroit. I don't even know what the hell we're doing here.
No one knows.
No one.
You left out the worst part of my resume, which was, and I think it's applicable to this podcast, which was the show on 105.1 Detroit Sports or whatever it was. I don't even remember what it was called. A horrific time in my career, but fun. It made me really hate sports, and now I love sports again.
Well, it made you the person you are. But so, Carlos, let's welcome him, Marc Fellhauer. But let me just say this: the real reason he's here, and we can talk shop and podcast, a little bit down the road here. The real reason he's here is because he is a fan, Carlos. Something you just discovered, that there are actual fans out there. He is a fan of the Detroit Lions. And sorry, Michigan State fans, he's a fan of Michigan. He actually went to Michigan, right, Mark?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
When did you graduate?
1998.
So you've been living that fandom for 24 years.
Oh, you were there in the golden era. Oh boy.
Yeah. Now I will say that, and I don't think Carlos knows this, but this is what is weird about me. I grew up a Buckeye fan, right? My family's from Ohio. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My family moved to Ann Arbor in like 81. So I was a little kid, but I was still a Buckeye fan until I went to school there. So even throughout my high school years, I loved both schools, but I was still a Buckeye fan, number one. And then I went to school there, and then I had no choice. And I'm so glad, even with some of the failures against that school, I'm so glad I'm a Maize and Blue guy.
How do you reconcile your childhood fanaticism with your adult fanatic? I mean, how does that even, I can't even imagine. It's like a Red Sox fan becoming a Yankees fan or something like that. That's weird.
It is, but it's honestly, it's from the experiences I had going to the university. I never had anything against Michigan, although my dad raised me to not like them. He tried his best. He tried his best. But just going to the school there and experiences and friends, going to the games, that's why it's there's no other choice now. Which I always wondered about people that got undergrads and then graduates from another school, like a graduate degree. I'm like, how do you choose who to root for?
No. Graduate degrees do not mean anything. It's your undergrad degree. That's okay. That's where you're born and raised. Yeah.
But I was telling Sean earlier today that I grew up a Washington, formerly known as Redskins, Commanders fan back when they were the Redskins. Like, that was my team growing up as a kid. I loved the lineman. I loved Rigo, Joe Viesman. I loved that whole
Heisman
team.
For the Heisman. Yeah,
exactly. But because the Lions were always really bad, but still my dad took me to all those games and I rooted for a really bad team. And then in high school, they actually got good. And I feel like people forget that they were a good team. And now I live and die by them. That's why I appreciated your column. You finally know what it's like.
Yeah, after all these years, and we'll get to Michigan and Michigan State college football here soon. But let's start with the Lions, and I want to open it up to you, Carlos, because you saw the light, man. I think you finally realized you're not riding into a void. They're actual human beings, flesh and blood, with souls, if you believe in that kind of thing. I don't know if you do, but a lot of people do. Yeah. With souls out there who care about this probably more than they should, but it's the nature of fandom. So, what have you got for Mark? Ask him how he felt with this loss to the Vikings on Sunday and where he would rank it.
Wait, you're turning it over to me, but you're telling me what questions to ask. Okay. This is how it goes. This is how it goes, Mark. He explains Carlos to me every week. He tells me what to ask. That's how we go.
We call that Sean-splaining.
Sean-splaining, yes. Please trademark that. Get t-shirt. If you get t-shirts, I'll pay for one. Yeah, no. This was for those of you who don't know, or one listener out there, I spent the Sunday with Sean at his beautiful property. I mean, it's like Southwark from the old Dallas show. It's just amazing. He calls it a cinder block house. No. This is a beautiful mansion. I would call it the old manse, kind of like the tradition of the great writers like Emerson and Thoreau and those guys. And with his two boys, they're in their 20s. And I've watched Lions games before with friends, but they were kind of more casual Lions fans and whatever. But Sean's boys really took this personal. I mean, it meant a lot to them, and I'm going to ask you about that too. And it's the first time I've ever spent the whole day watching the game with real fans who really cared, who knew the history of the team. It mattered to them. It bothered them. And they're wonderful kids, by the way. Sean's wife did a great job raising them, basically. But yeah, it was such an enlightening experience. And trust me, and I'm one of the few sports writers. I don't know if you know this, Mark, but a lot of the sports writers, I'm not going to name names, but a lot of them think it's far beneath them to speak with fans and to interview fans. It seems like a very pedestrian, high school journalism thing or whatever. I love talking to the fans. I won't always write about them, but I sometimes do write columns about the fans and I interview them. I want to get their perspective, but I don't spend 3 hours with them on a Sunday suffering the slings and arrows of a game. So how invested are you? How do you, because you're also professional. You have to speak about the games here and there and all that, and chime in when ML and Sean let you. But how much does it still hurt when you watch a loss like that on Sunday?
Well, I'm older now, so it doesn't hurt as much. It's just a lot of it's one of those things where you're presented with something and it gets yoinked away, and they're such a mirror of the city, right? In a lot of ways, everybody in this country craps on Detroit. Every NFL fan craps on the Lions, and I think it's that hope where it's one of these days, this city, this team is going to show everybody that, hey, we're people too, man. We're winners here, right? This is not an accurate reflection of it. So they go on the road. This would have been a huge victory, one we haven't seen in a long time. I think when they played Minnesota last year, it was a close game, but they came back, right? So the difference is, here's the shiny object in front of you where they're up by 14. It's like, yes, this is a different team. This is not a 3-13-1 team of last year. This is a improved team that is going to make smart decisions. And then when you see what I felt, and everybody can argue about it, I felt it was a terrible decision to kick the field goal. And that was the most dejecting part, honestly, was the decision making that I did not expect out of Dan Campbell. Matt Patricia, totally. We've seen him make so many mistakes. Caldwell, terrible clock management. Schwartz is a whole nother issue, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh God, because I hate the refrain, same old Lions. I just hate it because this isn't the same team. This isn't the same management, the same players. Every team is different every year. That's where the pain is, right? The pain is this hope.
Let me ask you this. Sean's boys are still in their 20s, so they have time to get to this point. But you're in your mid 40s. Mm-hmm. When you watch the game, and like you said, you're older now, so it doesn't hurt quite the same. But I've heard this from a lot of fans who are, more mature, and they hate themselves for getting sucked into watching these games and caring, even somewhat. Do you hate yourself? Is there self-loathing involved?
Nope, not one bit, because I love the sport, right? So I was still entertained by it. Good. You can't have the good without the bad. Unfortunately, there's just been so much bad with this franchise. But when that good hits, and it's going to someday, I believe it. And then maybe I'm the idiot for believing it. This town is going to explode, right?
Okay, one quick question. Preseason prediction. How many wins do you think?
Oh, I thought 7. I thought 7 was legit. So anything over that is gravy. But it's, and maybe that's because I didn't expect them to win at Minnesota, and here they are up 14-0. So it is that emotional ride during the game, and honestly, it's exhausting. but I think that's why we like sports, right? Don't we? We want the end to be better, but it's the ride that's fun.
No, and it's absolutely, and as Carlos alluded to it earlier, it's the hope. And it's interesting you say 7. My boys are not delusional, right? I mean, they thought the same thing. 7-8 wins. The problem is
I heard one of them say 9.
Maybe 9. Yeah, but even then, 9 is not a playoff run. I mean, maybe
you're close. There was a team that made with 9 last year.
Maybe if things go right, you can get in, whatever. But 9 is not a team that's going to go do anything, really, right? So it's just better than 3 wins. So, but they weren't delusional at all about it. They're like you, Mark, like most people, whether it was 6, 9, somewhere in there between, obviously better than 3. The problem is, even in the Philly game, you're like, these guys, this doesn't look familiar, does it? They look a little bit more competent, and especially on offense. Wow, they got some playmakers, and oh my goodness, they've got a line that's pushing back, and there are holes to run through. And then you see it again in Washington, and then the first 3 quarters against Minnesota, even as some of these guys are getting banged up. DeAndre Swift, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's hobbling around, and they're still making plays. And so it's like 3 weeks in, that feels like an eternity relative to all the suckitude for the last generation. You know what I mean? But it's plenty of time, Mark, as I would imagine you can attest to get your heart in even a little bit different place for a couple hours Sunday before it's yanked away again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you coming off that Washington win, you expect good things, right? I think I was telling you that a lot of the futures bets where you bet who's going to win the Super Bowl, the number 1 team last week that money was being placed on was Kansas City, rightfully so. Second was Buffalo, and third was the Lions, because people saw a value in the return they would get on that. But it was also because they came off a very convincing win over a bad team at home. This is the thing about being a Lions fan. We understand all the caveats. Like we know that Washington was they're not a good team. I think we're all kind of surprised how good Philadelphia really is now. And this is the other thing too. It's the NFL. What do you really ever know? I mean, look at the Colts. Look at the Colts win, right? Like they beat Kansas City, didn't they? Nobody expects that
after getting punked by Jacksonville, right?
Yeah. See, this is the NFL. To me, it was more inside the game. It's like, oh wow, look how they came out. They're up 14-0. In the NFL, 14-0 is pretty tough to overcome, albeit it was early in the game. It's just a frustration. And once again, it's a frustration of the call for a lot of fans that he made to kick it when we thought, hey, Mr. Grit, Mr. Gambler guy, you've gone for it 4th down on, basically every possession that you've had. I think whether they 4 of 6 up to that point on 4th downs. And so you want to, if we're going to be an aggressive team and that's our identity, you stick to it.
Were you living and dying, Mark, with the other plays? Like Carl's going to, I think, back this up. I remember late 3rd quarter, early 4th quarter. I don't remember exactly when the drive was, but they had a 3rd and short, really short, a yard, less than a yard. And they threw a go route down the sideline.
Yep.
And Jake, my oldest, is just like, what are we doing? Do you remember that, Carlos? He's like, why are we calling that? What are we doing? As soon as he dropped back to pass, he started like, what are we doing? Are you like that too with each decision through the game?
Well, yeah. And that might just be the nature of watching a lot of football. It almost didn't matter. But while Carlos and I were waiting for you to join so patiently, we were talking about that play.
We had a lot of time.
We had too much time. We basically went over the whole game. I didn't have a problem with passing it, but that play it's a little odd, but it's okay. I don't want to second guess every single play that is called.
Yeah.
Right. We could, but at that time in that game, I'm okay with it. I'm not that bummed out about that play, but yeah, I don't want to be in the position as a Lions fan, as we have been our whole lives, of guessing every single coaching decision.
Let me ask you this about Carlos then, because I assume you read the column, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Did he wrote
every week?
Yeah. No, we all read Carlos. Good column, talented writer. good columnist. Sometimes living on Saturn, but
it gets us as emotional as the Lions do.
Sometimes it does. But did it
for worse?
Did it surprise you at all that somebody who's lived here for 20 years, maybe longer,
and
has been covering Detroit sports for that long,
yes,
didn't realize until a few days ago exactly the relationship between the Lions and their fans?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah, it kind of surprised me. I hate being a Lions fan and being painted as just an idiot, right? For buying into our team. In a way, I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to be born here. I didn't choose to root for this team. I'm glad they're my team. I'm glad I'm here. I love this area. I love the people of this area, but I didn't choose to have a bad team. I think it's worse. It is absolutely worse if you were born here and you choose to root for a different team.
Yes.
By a mile.
Although
if you're gonna be a LeBron James and root for the Yankees and the Cowboys when you're born in Ohio, that is just horse crap. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. No, you know what? And that's the thing, right? Is you don't. And I wonder this about myself growing up in LA is I tended to root, although I was an LA Kings fan and they were terrible for a long time. And I stuck with them. So I paid my dues, but I was a Dodger fan too. So I saw a lot of winning. And then, you know, what's funny is I wasn't much of a Lakers fan. I liked them, but it was like rooting for the Yankees kind of in their heyday. Like it just was too easy. And there were so many, I felt there were a lot of fake Lakers fans. So
it sounds like the Lions are tailor-made for you then.
Yeah. I mean, that's the Lions. But you know what? I couldn't be a Rams fan. The Rams, I went to some games and they just sucked and they were so frustrating. And I just remember going to Anaheim Stadium and there were always fights. There was just like fights after fights and the team sucked. And it was just like,
well, then maybe you're not made out to be a Lions fan. I mean,
because the Silverdome days, my goodness.
Yeah. And at least, I mean, that's the thing is like the Rams had Dickerson when I was growing up there and he was exciting, but they couldn't get the quarterback right. And they were just, you
didn't like Dieter Brock. Let's talk about old Rams quarterbacks.
I was a Vince Ferragamo guy for a little while. I like Ferragamo, but it was just, you know, what's his name? Jim Everett. Although Jim Everett going after what's his name? Jim Rome was just classic TV. It was awesome. I was working in the office that night, one of my first jobs when that happened, and everybody just lost their minds when we saw that on was it ESPN or whatever it was back then?
Yeah, I think it was on the Deuce because I think Romy had a nice leather jacket on.
So when the Deuce was edgy.
I bet
so
you
Mark,
I do.
Do you think, Mark, and by the way, Carlson mentioned fans earlier and talking about fans. I used to do this thing called undercover fans.
Oh, here we go. The undercover fan.
But I can remember back when Metro, and Pistons, back when Metro departments or desks, I guess, city desks were a lot more flush with people and cash and everything else at big metropolitan newspapers. We would do stuff in sports, talking to fans. Like sports writers would never do that because, as Carl said, it was beneath you. And I can remember getting sent out to the Silverdome and just the fights, Mark, that would break out on the stands. It was just every time I went, it was unreal.
Oh yeah, that's part of the reason I miss it.
Yeah, it was just on.
I remember as a little kid, I knew exactly where to look. It was always up in I guess that would be the south east corner of the Silverdome upstairs. Always, there was always going to be a fight.
Cheap seats, yeah.
It was always above the Pepsi family section or whatever in the Silverdome too. Very ironic.
No, that was some kind of scene out there. Okay, we need to take a quick break. I have one more question for you, Mark, about the Lions and Carlos that I think our listeners will want to hear.
And I have a question for you guys too.
Okay, good. And then we're going to talk some Michigan State, but we need to do whatever the Free Press does to pay for this podcast, to promote this podcast. I'm not sure what to do. Carlos and I still haven't figured that out, have we, Carlos?
No. Nobody gets paid.
I mean, I don't know what's going on there.
Anjanette gets paid.
There's somebody named Anjanette Delgado, and she seems to be in charge, but who knows? Anyway, we got to take a break. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean.
Hello. I'm Phil Friend, the host and producer of Spartan Speak, a podcast collaboration between the Detroit Free Press and Lansing State Journal focusing on Michigan State sports. Each week, I'm joined by the OGs of the MSU podcasting game, Free beat writer Chris Laurie, and LSJ sports columnist Graham Couch as we discuss and dissect the latest sports news coming out of East Lansing. Not only is Spartan Speak one of, if not the longest-running MSU sports podcast out there, you won't find a show with two people as clued into the Spartans as Chris and Graham, each of whom have spent a decade-plus covering MSU and bring years of institutional knowledge and insight to the podcast. And once in a while, they'll let me throw out a take as well. Along with discussing the latest news, we'll break down the Spartans' last game on the hardwood and the gridiron. What went right? What went wrong? Jet sweep. Again? For both Mel Tucker and Tom Izzo, get you ready for the next game, make predictions, and so much more. We can also guarantee at least one reference to Kalamazoo every podcast. So if you haven't already, download, subscribe, and listen to Spartan Speak on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on your podcast app of choice.
Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Mark, you have a question, I know, but you go ahead. You're the guest. You ask first, and then I got one more question for you about Carlos.
Okay, well, it was directly from Carlos's column about watching the game with you and learning to become a fan. And early on in it, you're saying, you cover the Lions, every other team, with dispassionate objectivity, which I love. Dispassionate objectivity. And
it's good writing, isn't it? Just
yeah, it's good writing. if you say so yourself.
No, pretty much. Didn't look at all the eyes in the column. That tells you all you need to know.
And then, you followed up with, "I have to."
Yeah, exactly.
Now, my question is, I Hunter S. Thompson has a very famous quote that no journalist is unbiased. I mean, it's just impossible for a human to do that. That never creeps in. It might not be good for you guys if a team's good, right? Because misery loves company, but it's got to creep in because you cover a team that you want to see them win.
No,
never.
No, we don't. You cannot even, and this is even true when I was growing up in LA and I started covering the teams that I rooted for. There was a weird thing that happens where you can no longer root for that team in that moment when you're covering them. You can't get involved. There are people, there are athletes that you kind of root for, that you like, they're nice guys and they help you out in your job. They do give you good interviews, but you can never really root for them to win or lose or do well, or, basically what you'll hear a lot, I think, from a lot of sports writers is you root for good stories, you root for good storylines. So if there's a spectacular failure, that's an interesting storyline. If there's an amazing comeback, that's a great storyline. And you don't root against people per se. I don't think that it works both ways. You don't root against them. You're kind of, I'm sorry, I'm going to say you're kind of like a judge, but I know that just means that Mike Elrick has just been, the bat signal's just gone on and he's going to
write 15 pages about you.
15 pages about me, and it's coming Sunday. But you can, I don't know if Sean would agree with this, but you just cannot root for a team and get involved. Once you go down that route, it's, you lose yourself. You just cannot. You need that professional kind of distance to be able to think clearly and not get involved.
Even as a columnist,
you just can't. There are people you like, there are people you don't like. Personally, yes, that Hunter S. Thompson, when he wasn't on cocaine or Quaalude, whatever he was on,
it was boring.
Brief seconds when he had a little lucidity, he was right. As a human, you are biased toward people and maybe some situations. And trust me, I've beyond just covering sports. I've talked to people that I don't disagree with. I've talked to white nationalists. I've talked to, some people who were, let's burn the whole government down, anarchists. I've talked to all kinds of people. And the important thing, I think, in journalism, no matter what role you're in, is you need to sort of understand where that person's coming from. Give them that respect of, I want to give you as much understanding as possible, because maybe, and like I wrote in the column, I've never seen it from this point of view. Let me at least try to understand it. You may not agree with them, but you have to open yourself up a little bit. Now, there's the people who are obviously for Fox News and different things, right? Different points of view that are very, very solidified. They know their audience, they know who they're talking to. But most media isn't like that. So, even as a columnist, you can't get into, I'm rooting for somebody, I'm rooting against somebody. I just don't know how you could do that, really.
It's interesting though when you read sports blogs, okay, right? Be it typically with college sports, when you read a blog, and it's different. I mean, any blog is going to be different than
Right.
the Detroit Free Press, the Detroit News, that strive for the journalistic ethics. But when you read those blogs, you know they're coming from a fan's point of view.
Yes.
Like they're rooting for them. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying, you know where to go to get that, I suppose. But I find it'd be really hard to set my fandom aside. Can I ask you guys another sports reporter type question?
Sure.
Do you have to
I'll just say one.
Yeah.
I'll say one quick thing about blogs, and I read the blogs too for my favorite teams, but it almost never happens where someone who's a blogger ever works for like a professional like newspaper, news outlet, because that's their sweet spot, right? They know who their audience is. They're writing very, very intently on from a specific point of view, and I'll be honest with you, at some of these press conferences for college or whatever it might be, bloggers don't ask a lot of questions. They're not really there to be honestly objective about this question or to challenge a coach or to whatever. It's they're kind of like in a little bit like PR mouthpieces in that way for their teams, for the teams they cover. So it's not, and that's blurred lines, Mark. That has blurred lines in the industry because a lot of people don't distinguish the difference.
I actually would slightly disagree with that, the blogging part in particular, because those folks that do that are just as likely to get more emotionally angry when things don't go well, and they write that. So to me, it goes both ways. It maybe doesn't come out in the questions in press conferences, although occasionally it does, especially at the college level. But where identity and the heart plays so much more a part of it. But
that
anyway, go ahead with your follow-up. Yeah,
that kind of leads to that question, because there are some people, and I know there's some people in this town that I don't want to go to the games. I don't want to go to practice. I certainly don't want to sit in the press box because I can't be that mouthpiece if I have to see these people or see these writers. And I kind of appreciate that. If your audience is the fan, you want to experience it like the fan is. And I didn't know how you guys felt about that.
Oh, it's changed our business in a lot of ways. I mean, Bill Simmons was probably the first to do that.
There you go. Yeah.
And really blow up, right? I mean, he wrote as a Boston fan and turned that into a job into ESPN, and readers responded. And I think they like a lot of that, right? They want you to be angry when they're angry and joyful when they're joyful and that sort of thing. And I'm going to be curious to see like what Carlos and I try to do and others, what that's going to look like 20 years from now.
But
right?
Do you have to go to the press conferences? Do you have to sit in the press box to be a voice to cover a team?
If columns and beat writers are different, right? If you're talking about, do you want to provide, like you can watch, if you know the game you're writing about and you understand it at a certain level and you watch it on TV, you can probably opine about that from your laptop and give the reader some interesting thoughts. And there are people that do it, right? There are absolutely people that do it. If you want stuff about, well, not just injuries, because that's all pretty public now, but if you want some behind the scenes stuff, if you want beat reporters to go in and have off the record conversations about why this person's struggling, what they're trying to accomplish, all that, and then write with some authority, even if you're not going to directly quote, then yeah, that's different. And I don't think you can get that from watching on the TV. That's different. You can have analysis without going and doing anything, but can you have that backed up with a certain amount of authority about, wow, here's what's really happening inside? Because we still do that. Dave Burkett, who covers the Lions for the Free Press, is a great example of that to me.
Yeah, I think the blogs have to make that decision on, I mean, first you have to be credentialed. The organizations themselves have to decide whether you're actually a viable news outlet or is it just, marcfellhauer.com and you're surrounded by Barbies in your basement and
exactly.
You're going to be a beat writer now, So, and a lot of them, I think they're smarter. You're not going to out Dave Burkett. So you might as well do film breakdown and do mailbags and you talk to you do interviews or whatever it might be with other outlets and get into really dive into the nitty gritty of, the history of the 4th and 1 call and the whatever, all these different things, right? Instead of you come to the Free Press because Dave's in the locker rooms, Dave's talking to the general manager, Dave's talking to players and assistant coaches and,
agents, scouts, right?
Agents, scouts, all this stuff, that's the kind of stuff that that's real reporting. The other stuff it's valid too. I mean, trust me, my brother-in-law is a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan, and he loves the statistical breakdown. And there's some blog he reads in St. Louis, and he doesn't really care about the nitty-gritty of the post-game press conferences. He wants to know, all the regressions, all the what happened in the, in these pitching matchups, and why didn't they go with Wainwright here, and all. Like, he's into that sort of granular level stuff. So every fan wants something a little bit different. And you know what? You can do both. You can. That's a great thing about being a fan these days, right? You can go read Dave Burkett or Sean Windsor, get his sage, point of view. And he mostly travels to eat and, stay in nice hotels on the company's dime, but he also covers the game too. And he's there and talks to the players and coaches. But then there's also the bloggers who break down the really nitty gritty stuff, and they'll do some video analysis and all that. So there's room for both, really, for a fan.
And Mark, and I would say to you, I would be careful, Carl. I mean, I don't know. Let me rephrase that. I mean, when we say real reporting, it's just traditional reporting. It's not real. It's somebody that can figure out, go out and look at something and provide a different.
That's real reporting. That's real
view
reporting.
of it, and provide. That's all another form of reporting.
That's the only kind of real reporting. Real reporting is you say something and you got to face somebody in the face, in the eyes. You stand behind what you write.
That's not real reporting. That's column writing and going in and being accountable to what you've written.
Go ask Dave how many times he's had arguments with players. And
coaches. For sure. No, but that's not what you were saying earlier. You're talking about gathering. I'm talking about gathering information or gathering information and offering information. That's what we're talking about. And look, can we get back to what you were asking earlier, Mark? Because I don't. Let's get back to this subjectivity.
I think I won. I think I beat Sean. Yeah, checkmate.
No. It's not. No, it's dismissive and elitist. First, it's dismissive and it's elitist. And our own newspaper has changed the way it covers beats, Mark. And Carlos doesn't read our papers. He doesn't know this. But the beat writer we have for Michigan, Michael Cohen, is the best. Let me rephrase. Let me be careful here for a second. He offers great analysis, right? That's what we did. Nick Baumgartner who writes for The Athletic, used to cover for us. That's how he made his name among fans, is offering analysis. We're going to keep doing that at the Free Press. We're doing it more and more. You can't just go turn the screw and write the news and have that be okay. There's too much of that out there, to your point, and we are trying to adapt. We have to, or we're going to die.
We do both. We do all of it. That's the difference. We don't.
But we do more and more.
Nick did not just sit in his basement and look at tape. But
fans care less and less about who has something perfect.
How do you know? How do you know what fans care less?
Because we look at the metrics.
They care about the news.
Of course, they care about the news to some degree, but they can get the news in 100 different places, and it's instant. And we can do that online.
You know what the lead Lions story was today? It was the question I asked Campbell about: do you still support your kicker? Would you still trot him out there for another 54-yarder? He said, yeah, I'd give him another go. Dave writes that. That's the headline. And that's what a blogger was not there to ask that question. And a blogger would not have asked that question. It takes a real reporter with the guts, to be able to stand up there and have done this for a while and know this is the question I can ask. And frankly, Sean, one of the things that we've seen in our business because of the turnover, because it's a more transitory business. There are a lot more different kinds of jobs out there, which is good for the business. But it's also, it leads to less consistency in the writers who cover the team. And so you have a lot of newer, younger writers. And you may disagree with me on this, but I really sense I have a sense of timidness from younger people who aren't on the beat as long, who didn't come from, hey, I covered the Rams, I covered the Patriots, and I'm covering the Lions. They get bumped up sometimes, a lot of times, from college beats. They're not used to dealing with pro coaches and pro players. Their line of questioning is very different.
It just depends on to me, it depends on the individual, man. I mean, and you haven't been around a lot of colleges, and that may change here coming up, but it's,
I've listened to enough college press.
There are plenty of these people that ask because they're mad at a loss. There are plenty of people that ask these questions. I don't know how we got down this road. Mark, let's get back to your central question about, can you be objective? Absolutely not. Okay. And Carlos is not objective. He's not. He's a human being. Hunter Thompson was right. Of course we bring biases. We bring bias in what we're watching and how we write about it, and the way we write in general, and our life experience.
He's asking, do we root or do we root? That's
no, but you mentioned the quote had to do with subjectivity and objectivity. And I don't believe for a second that we aren't quietly sometimes you know, I like to see wins sometimes because it's good for business, right? That's my own agenda. More people read, it's better for the free press. Not only that, I have a family, I live in this community, and when they're big wins, you go out, it's just a nicer place to be, right?
I don't, and I totally disagree with that. Sean and I have talked about this many times. I totally disagree with rooting for the win and more.
It's not that you're rooting. It's not that you're actively rooting for it. It's that I think it's fun when they win. I just do. I think when teams are better, it's better stories. Now collapses are interesting too, Mark, but that's only interesting for so long, and then people just tune out.
It's the unexpected, right?
Exactly.
It's the unexpected that is good for business. If it's a good team and they're all of a sudden terrible, that's good for business. If they're a terrible team and they're all of a sudden good, I would think that's good for business.
No, it's great.
Winning is good for business. Sean is absolutely 100% right for the first time that winning is good for business. That when the team wins, when they get on a roll, and as you know, Mark, when even in the recent era when they made the playoffs under Caldwell and Schwartz before that, and usually when you win, you have good players and there's some excitement, right? You have the Sues and the whatever, the
Calvin, Barry,
Calvin. Yeah. It's not just it's not in a bubble that it happens, right? So there's an excitement level to it. I totally agree with that. However, when I'm in the press box, I cannot sit there and think, whoa, I hope they win. I hope they win another one. I hope they get on a roll. This is good for business. I hope that, it's like, hey, what's going to happen is going to happen. And you got to take it as it comes.
I know how to settle this objectivity question. Carlos, do you own any apparel with logos on it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a line
not from Detroit.
Not from Detroit. Okay.
And I don't want to speak out of turn, but Carlos is a human being in the press box. I've heard him say, oh, I hate that. I've heard him say, that's terrible. That's awful. I can't believe that happened. I've heard him say that exactly though.
Those are professional judgments.
They're not professional. They're not. They're being a human being. They're not professional at all. Right. I mean, that doesn't mean you're a Lions fan, right?
I've fallen into that trap now, right? And I have already talked about how 105.1 has totally ruined my working for sports radio, ruined sports in a great way for me. I'm being serious. It is absolutely hysterical, but I'm being serious. And one of the ways it has done that is how I look at my favorite team, which is Michigan football, right? And I try to be objective because I don't want to be a slappy, which I hate that phrase so much. I don't want to be a slappy for my school. So I'm trying to look at it as, what are the problems with this team? Is this a real win? Like I'm trying to do that. And am I depriving myself of just enjoying the ride? And sometimes I feel like I am. Last year was such a surprise. And I feel like part of that year, I just kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. Like, they're gonna be the team they were in the COVID year and be terrible.
I wrote restaurant reviews for a little bit, and the reason I stopped doing them is because I love to cook and I like to eat, and I like to try all sorts of places. And I didn't want it made you dispassionate, to use Carlos's word, right? Because you have to be that way to a degree, and to a large degree. And I hated it. I just wanted to go eat and not worry about it and talk about whoever I was eating with. Oh, do you like this food? Do you not? And not have to worry about saying that to anybody. And it's the same with cooking. So, people talk about what a great job we have sometimes. A lot of people think, oh, that must be great. Well, it does take away that fandom. Carlos is absolutely right. Here's my last, we got to get to one more break here. But before we do, Mark, here's my last question about this and the Lions and what Carlos wrote. Do you think that his, I don't want to call it an exorcism because I don't want to suggest that he had demons running around him for the last 20 years, but do you think the enlightened view, the catharsis, the epiphany that he had on Sunday will now make him be able to connect a little bit more with the community he's lived in for the last 2 decades?
Oh God, I would hope not. I mean, one day is going to change a man. I would think no. I don't know if he wants to change or if he even needs it. Carlos isn't on the couch here. I don't know if he needs to change or wants to change.
Sean wanted to call one of our segments Carlos on the couch, I believe, at one time.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually did. No, but he wrote his column as sort of him. He put himself on the couch a little bit, right? That's what's fun. And Carlos is willing to do that is what makes him good, right? Or one of the reasons it makes him good. So, it's fun to.
But once again, when you get close to a subject, and I'm going to use you, Carlos, as the example. met you for the first time last week, right? I'm doing this show now, and I've read you for 20 years. I don't want to look at your column differently than how I did before I met you, right? In a way, I almost don't want to know more about you because
Why?
Because I want the work. I want to look at the work, right? I don't want to know Carlos the person. I want to know Carlos. I want to judge his work, right?
That's Matt Damon who used to talk about that. Why he didn't do interviews. He didn't want anybody judging who he was. He wanted to look at the character and judge that performance.
Look at society. I think some of my favorite artists and musicians and actors are people that aren't on social media because there's not enough I know to hate about something they did, right? Like I don't want to have to separate the art from the artist. I just don't want to know about it.
So you don't want to know Carlos as a person. That's hurtful.
No, that's fine. I think I can separate his art from the artist in regards to Carlos. But when it comes to sports too, and you're there, I think that's really hard to separate it. So maybe that's why you don't want to root for a team. I don't know what I'm saying.
No, you always know what you're saying.
Space.
No, you're not, and we want you to fill a little bit more space. We got one more. We got a shorter segment to come back to. We promise we're going to get to Michigan State football real quickly, but let's take one more break to make Anjanette happy. And Carlos, anybody else we need to make happy?
Kerry Jr., our fill-in producer.
Okay, yeah, we need to make him happy too. All right, let's take one more break. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. All right, we got to wrap this show up, man. We always end our show, and you probably don't know this, Mark, because I'm sure you've never listened.
I've never made it this far.
No, yeah, you've never made it this far.
Good.
We always end the show with what we say. My favorite thing. It's just Carlos's idea. Surprisingly enough, he likes to have a little bit of joy, positivity, just goodwill towards other human beings to wrap the show up. So what we do is we say, what was your favorite thing from the previous week, from the last 7 days? What thing did you enjoy the most? It could be something simple like, I had a new flavor of ice cream. It could be
in my whole life.
In your whole life, the last 7 days. What was your favorite thing? We'll let Carlos go first, and you can think about it while he's talking.
All right. My favorite thing from last week was we went to our first music concert since the pandemic. We went to see, and it's an interesting
Dave Matthews.
Not Dave Matthews. It's an old band from a place you may be familiar with, Sean, named Dallas, Texas. The old 97s. They were a band in the 90s. We had a interesting connection to them because when my wife and I were dating in the 90s, we listened to them all the time. And when we were in California, when we moved here, and one of our best friends tells us casually one day, we're going to go see a band. I grew up with one of the, players, in Dallas. You may not have heard of them. It's the old 97. So it's like telling you, oh yeah, my best friend was Kurt Cobain or something, like, oh yeah, we're going to go see Nirvana or something. So we were floored by it. So anyway, this is in the fall of 19, we saw the old 97s. They were great. They were playing it in Ferndale. And then we stayed away from all these things during that pandemic. We just didn't feel comfortable going and sitting around a bunch of gross people and stuff, whatever. Not gross people, but we just didn't want to risk any COVID.
That's why he didn't figure out Lions fans cared about the team until 5 days ago.
Right. And so they came back and they played at Sanders Hall, and we went with our friends again, and then we got to see them and say hello to one of the band members. And it was a fantastic evening, great set. And it was just really great to reconnect and go back. And I also forgot how much I dislike standing for 3 hours watching an opening act and then a band. So I'm too old now, Sean. If I don't get a seat, I'm not going to go to another music concert.
So much for ending it on a positive note.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm with you. I totally agree.
I'm too old. I'm too old for this stuff, right?
I'll go next, and I'm going to keep it quick, and then you can finish the show for us, Mark, if that's all right.
Ooh,
since you're the professional
closer, you're going to be our Jose Valverde.
Mine is really simple. I mean, originally it was my favorite thing was that Carlos came over and we cooked for him, and he watched the game, and we got to hang out outside of work a little bit. That was great. I would stop it there, but the fact that he got to watch my boys react like fans and see that up close, and then to the point where he wanted to write about it, and it sort of not changed his thinking, but maybe gave him a different viewpoint. I just love that, and the fact that he got some fried chicken and ribs to go with that, and mashed potatoes. I want to say
Oh, it was everything. What didn't you and your wife went? I mean, Mark, I don't know. You've probably never been invited, but
No.
oh,
No,
it was this repast. It was amazing. I mean, it was every
just comfort
kind of
food.
you can yeah, but the best. It was amazing. I I know Sean loves food, right? I mean, he loves food more than life probably, but they went all out. And Sean,
I don't love life.
Cannot thank you enough. But that was an amazing spread. So I highly recommend it. If you ever are in his good graces enough to get invited over, you'll be.
I would love for Mark to come over and watch a game actually and eat.
The funny thing is, I grew up right by where you live. You know that, right?
Yeah,
I think I told you that.
Yeah, you did.
I grew up like 2 miles from where you live now.
Yeah,
that's
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So
the problem with going last year is I thought of too many things. I'm just too positive about too many
not
great
last
things.
year. It's the last week.
I know it was that good of a week, right? Michigan won. I mean, that was great.
Okay.
I had a new flavor of hummus at Cal's Lunch Bowl. And
there's awesome.
There's a plug, so that was really good. But honestly, and this is gonna make me sound so soft, but I don't care. I've been working like 6 days a week since the pandemic began. Schedules get shifted around. So now I have my Fridays free again, which is great. And picking up my daughter from school, which I don't get to do because we record Drew and Mike so late. I drop them off every day, but I got to pick her up, right? She's 8.5. She's in 3rd grade. I got to pick her up and we went to the cider mill. And I know that is so cliche.
No, it's not.
But it wasn't the act of just picking her up. It wasn't the act of just going to the cider mill, but her friends ended up going too. It was being able to sit there and watch her interact with her friends and her saying, "That's my dad there." Like that. I don't know why that just hits you. It's kind of American Beauty-esque, these simple things. It's what I love, man. I love those simple things.
I think it's awesome. I do too. Yeah. That's my dad. Yeah. That's the best, right? Carlos will tell you that.
You see your kid in a different light. She's not playing with me. She forgets I'm there and I get to watch her. Like that was just cool. I don't get enough of that.
Mark, I agree with you. That's a very soft,
incredibly
sappy take. I disagree with all of it. No, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, and anybody who's been a parent, and you have kids
it's not unique.
It's but it's a magical time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can. If you don't,
it's a great age.
Being that young,
that's
but
such a great age.
It is a great age. So that's. Yeah. I hope you.
It's the sweet spot, really.
Pictures or able to document.
Of course, unfortunately, too many pictures.
Yeah, it's a sweet spot because they can do some few things for themselves and they're not embarrassed about being with you. They love your company. You can talk about the world a little bit with them, in little ways. It's fun.
The problem is 18 hours later, she's trolling me about Michigan because she thinks it's funny to pick on them. So.
Well, that's also too.
So great.
I will tell you though that every age is great. That's cliche too, but Carlos will tell you that. Like. He's got 19-year-olds, I think, or 19, wow. And that's great. Mine are a few years older than that, and Carlos will back this up. Yeah, they're still pretty great. So, yeah, you're not soft.
I mean,
I'm the soft one here.
I asked Carrie I was talking to Carrie beforehand, ask him how soft I am with all the Barbie stuff in the background.
Well, no, that's great. So you're a girl dad. That's awesome. But I'm the soft one here, but I got to be tough right now because we got to get out of here. We got to let Carrie go, man. Don't we, Carlos?
Yes.
Or Carrie. Yeah, we want to thank Carrie, but let's thank Mark first, Carlos, shall we? Man, this has been great. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you asked. Glad my schedule worked out.
Yeah, I know. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, and I'm glad it worked out for a change. Carlos, who else do we need to thank? The listeners for joining us?
We should probably thank Andrew Hammond, right? We can't forget. Like, he's not, dead to us or anything.
No, he's just on a vacation.
Does he get vacation? I didn't know he got vacation. We don't get vacation.
I guess he does. Our normal producer, listeners, if you don't remember, which is shame on you. But we also want to thank who? Tell us.
We need to thank Anjana Delgado, Queen of the World / executive producer of this show, and Kirkland Crawford, also co-executive producer. We have a lot of executive producers, Mark. I don't think they do much, but but the most silence for the most important person, editor of the Free Press, Peter Bhatia.
Yeah.
But where can you find the show, Sean? Where?
A moment of silence. But what about Carrie? We haven't thanked Carrie, have we?
How many times have we? How much? God, how much credit does he need? Carrie Jr.
Thank you, Carrie.
Is our producer.
All right, did we take the prop? Was that a long enough moment of silence for Peter?
No, he's not going to be happy.
Okay. All right, where can we find this? Oh, you can find it wherever you find your favorite podcast, at Apple, Spotify. Carlos is still working on his own platform. Maybe Marc Fellhauer can help him out, and when Carlos is king of the world, you can find us there too. We want to thank y'all again for listening. We will talk to y'all next week.